So the MCU is the ever-growing universe that has really made an impact on the superhero genre as a whole. But what exactly is a hero genre anyway? When we look at a movie starring a superhero, it's always labeled an action movie with other supporting genres. So why isn't hero a genre? What criteria is there to a superhero movie? Does it have to be upholding the law? Does it have to be based off a comic? Is there a cape?
No capes.
So I did the reasonable thing when anybody has this sort of question. Huh. Okay, so when defining a genre, Peter Coogan, writer and director of the Institute of Comic Studies, because that's apparently a thing, wrote a book called The Secret Origin of a Genre. In it, Coogan details the conventions that make up a superhero film. They're pretty basic, but they make sense when you really think about them. 1. Their mission. Selfless fights against evil and protecting the innocent. 2. Their power, abilities and qualities that raise a person's performance above that of ordinary people. And 3. Their identity. A codename and costume that conveys their mission, power, and origin. These conventions are applied to almost any hero movie, but I wonder if we can find a movie that challenges all these conventions and yet still succeeds at being a decent, depending on who you ask, superhero movie. Captain America Civil War, directed by the Russo brothers. Now before we go on, I want to draw a parallel from superhero movies to westerns. The conventions used in westerns are very similar to the ones presented by Coogan, usually excluding the identity. Westerns include normally 3 character types that move the story forward: the white hat, the black hat, and the sheriff. While the same applies to superhero characters, there's a hero, our white hat, a villain, our black hat, and the law, the sheriff. We'll touch more on westerns later, but just keep this in the back of your mind for the rest of the video. Anyway, let's focus on Civil War. Civil War was the first MCU movie that focuses on using the expanded Marvel universe in the movie to drive the plot forward without being called an Avengers movie. And for good reason. Coming fresh off the plot of Captain America Winter Soldier, Civil War assumes you have seen at least Winter Soldier and 2 other Avengers movies. Now this isn't really a bad thing, but it does lead the audience to feel like not calling it an Avengers movie brings the stakes down a little, as the villain in the movie is not as destructive as the previous villain. The plot in Civil War is really split in 2. The hidden main plot, which focuses on Captain America chasing down Zemo, and the marketed plot, which focuses on the Avengers being split up by the Sokovia Accords. That's not taking a stab at the movie, that's generally what it is. It's called Civil War, the most successful comic book arc in Marvel comic history. It's no secret that when marketing a tentpole movie, the producers are going to have some level of control over it, so Civil War comic arc was going to happen eventually. The characters we're going to be focusing on are the ones that drive the hidden plot forward. Not demeaning any of the other 9 heroes. We all secretly love you, Hawkeye! The story is really about Captain America, our hero, Dr. Zemo, the villain, and Tony Stark, the law of the story. Now the MCU handles the development of characters in other movies, so Iron Man being the voice of the law in this movie is a rather big change for his character. The Sokovia Accords is what is motivating Stark to put away his previous morals of saving the world and focus more on saving the people. This is rich when you remember that Tony Stark sold weapons to fund his suits. Dr. Zemo is the black hat of this movie and conveys it in a different way from your conventional villain from your typical hero movie. Zemo vows that having the heroes kill each other is a bond that will shatter forever. He is motivated to have the Avengers kill each other because the Avengers failed to save his family in a wreckage from a previous movie. I won't go into detail on if this is a good villain design, as it is rather objective on what makes a strong villain. Some would say that you would have to have a menacing character, others would say you would have to be smart. I just think that if you have a solid objective that isn't simply rule the world, you're already doing better than half the villains right now. Finally, there's Captain America, so this is where things get interesting. In Captain America Civil War, Steve Rogers does not convey the 3 conventions of a superhero. Well, maybe apart from the identity part. Rogers is labeled a criminal in this movie. While this isn't the first hero movie to do this, the Russo brothers play up the fact that Cap is a criminal through basic dialogue and filling the movie with morally objective issues Captain America was previously involved with. And not only that, they even have a part where everyone associated with Captain America is put in a super jail. Let's break down Coogan's 3 conventions and see how Captain America portrays them. Captain America's fight against evil. So the motives of our villain are pretty clear. He wants to get revenge on the Avengers. And to do so, he frames Bucky Barnes in an international terrorist act. A villain from another movie? Man, do you see what I mean? You really need to watch the other movies. It really makes analyzing one movie analyze 8 movies. Captain America becomes too associated with trying to save Barnes, but Cap knows that Barnes is being controlled somehow by someone else. So Cap goes rogue, thus Cap wants to fight evil, but he looks bad for doing so. The Russo brothers show that Captain America's intentions are to save his friend by leaning heavily on previous knowledge of the movies. But the internal conflict within Rogers is portrayed perfectly by Chris Evans' acting. Because Barnes is previously a villain, you could say that Captain America is not meeting his mission to fight evil. Captain America's powers really don't play a major impact to the progression of the movie. Well, I can't obviously argue that he doesn't have powers, because look at him. He's a tank. He can't exactly punch his way out of the situation he has with his best friend. His best friend is an international terrorist. Finally, the identity of Captain America becomes one of a marked man by the end of the movie, disrespecting what it means to be a hero in the MCU. Fighting for what Steve Rogers believes in and not necessarily what the rest of the world needs him to fight for really causes social changes inside the movie's universe. These breakings of the conventions all bend to still make Captain America a hero though. So if he breaks all the conventions, why is he still our movie's main hero? We have plenty of other ones still in the movie. No one's saying because his name is on the movie title. It's because a theme the Russo brothers are trying to show us is betrayal for redemption, and it all relates to Captain America. Bucky betrays Captain America because he is under Zemo's control. He seeks redemption from the world. Captain America betrays Iron Man to keep Bucky safe. He seeks redemption from Bucky. Iron Man betrays Captain America to keep the world safe, but he also seeks redemption for his parents. The characters betray each other for something that is bigger than themselves, and it ends up costing everyone, leaving an effect on the audience that changes the way you view the character. But with all these factors accounted for, is Civil War still a superhero movie? Well, yeah. Even though the conventions are bended in this movie, it shows that our characters change over time and thus the genre changes over time. The most important thing for a genre to do is to change and evolve as time goes on to not stagnate. It's probably the reason why we have so many hero movies coming out nowadays. There are 10 superhero movies that come out this year. That's a lot, and some of them are different from others, but at least it shows that the format is willing to change. The plot, setting, style, character, and sometimes even themes are altered to make the hero movies feel different. So remember earlier in the video I mentioned how hero movies are like westerns? Well, they really are when you think of it. With most superhero movies, there's normally a western movie that probably has the plot that is very similar. The only changes to superhero characters are that they have a more strong and fleshed out backstory. The first Avengers movie is basically Silverado. It's a stretch, but you can also say that A Fistful of Dollars is kind of like Batman Begins. But I'd say Captain America Civil War is similar to The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Just that Captain America doesn't stare down 10 minutes with Iron Man. They stare down for about 10 seconds. Westerns were adapted into many different subgenres the same way hero movies are being adapted today. They're not different in terms of their creative evolution with time. So if hero movies are the modern day western, it almost begs the questions. Are hero movies an evolution of westerns, or are hero movies about to die out the same way westerns died of research? Also, why can't they just put hero as a listable genre on IMDb? They already do it for western!